Victoria owes us everything. Time to collect. My father's voice cut through the dinner conversation like a knife. I looked up from my plate, the fork halfway to my mouth, thinking I'd misheard. But the silence that followed told me I hadn't. Your brother Danny needs a house, my mother said, her eyes cold as January wind off the Hudson. You've had yours long enough. Sign it over. The number hit me like a freight train. $847,000. My brownstone in Brooklyn Heights. 20 years of mortgage payments. Every overtime shift, every skipped vacation, every sacrifice I'd made to build something that was mine. No. The word came out steady, final. The crystal wine glass flew before I could duck. Burgundy splashed across my white blouse, dripping down my chin, staining everything. My brother Danny's phone was already out, recording, his smirk wider than the Manhattan Bridge. "This is going viral," he whispered. I wiped wine from my eyes, tasting betrayal and fermented grapes. The dining room, my dining room, where I'd hosted them for 15 years, spun around me. The Persian rug I'd saved 3 months for. The mahogany table I'd inherited from Grandma Rose. All of it witness to my humiliation. "You ungrateful little," my father started. But I was already standing. I said no. Danny's laugh echoed off the exposed brick walls. "She thinks she has a choice." I didn't say anything else. Didn't argue. Didn't cry. I just smiled, the kind of smile that should have warned them. Instead, I walked out, my heels clicking against hardwood I'd refinished with my own hands. 7 days later, Mrs. Chen from next door knocked on my door. "Victoria, honey," she said, wringing her hands. "Your family, they're in some kind of trouble. Police cars, lawyers, the works." I poured myself coffee, steam rising like incense. "I know, Mrs. Chen." Her eyes widened. "You know? I've been waiting for this moment for a very long time." Before we continue with how I turned their own greed against them, I want to thank those of you who support these stories. Your contributions help me share these moments of truth with others who need to hear that betrayal doesn't have to mean defeat. Every share, every comment, every small gesture of support plants seeds of hope for someone facing their own family betrayal. That wine-soaked dinner was just the beginning. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that I'd been 3 steps ahead since the moment they'd started planning to take everything I'd built. That was the moment I knew justice wouldn't come from forgiveness or family therapy. It would come from my own hands, and it would be surgical. The silence in my apartment was deafening after I closed the door behind me. Wine still dripped from my hair onto the hardwood floor, each drop echoing like a funeral bell. I stood there, back pressed against the door, staring at the framed photo on my hallway table. Christmas 1995. All of us smiling. Danny was 8, gap-toothed, hugging me tight. Mom and Dad looked proud. I looked hopeful. God, I was so young, so stupid. I walked to my kitchen window, the one overlooking the Brooklyn Bridge, and suddenly I was 19 again. 2 jobs, waitressing at night, data entry during the day. My fingers were always cramped from typing, my feet always aching from standing. But Danny needed his college fund. Victoria's so responsible, Mom would brag to the neighbors. She's keeping this family together. The smell of burnt coffee from those endless nights flooded back. Studying for my own classes at 2 a.m. after working 16-hour days, I'd wanted to be an architect. Had the acceptance letter to Parsons. But Dad's construction business was failing, and someone had to pay the bills. Someone, always me. I touched the granite countertop I'd saved 2 years to afford. Every dollar earned while Danny got his BMW for his 16th birthday. "He needs reliable transportation," Dad had said, handing over the keys like it was nothing. I'd taken the subway for another 3 years. The memories crashed over me like waves. Danny's graduation Cornell, full ride that I'd supplemented with my own savings because books are expensive, Vic. I'd worn the same black dress I'd worn to every family event for 5 years. In the photos, I'm beaming, so proud of my little brother. He's not even looking at me. Then Dad's gambling debts. $43,000 to some guys from Queens with accents thicker than concrete. "Just this once, Victoria. We'll pay you back." I'd refinanced my first apartment, the tiny studio in Astoria that I'd loved more than anything. Gone. All of it. To save a man who'd never learned to save himself, And Mom's sweet, helpless mom who somehow always had money for Danny's spring break trips to Cancun, but needed me to cover her credit card payments. You're so good with money, honey. I don't know how you do it. I knew how. I did it by never buying anything for myself. By eating ramen for dinner so Danny could have steak. By wearing the same winter coat for 8 years while he got a new wardrobe every season. Standing in my kitchen now, wine-stained and alone, I realized the truth that had been staring at me for 28 years. I wasn't their daughter. I was their ATM. Their safety net. Their insurance policy against their own failures. Every birthday where they forgot to call but remembered when rent was due. Every Christmas where Danny got the latest gadgets while I got a sweater from Target. Every family dinner where they talked about his achievements, his job, his girlfriend, his bright future while I sat there, the invisible daughter who made it all possible. The photo on my refrigerator caught my eye. Last Thanksgiving, Danny's arm around some blonde he'd been dating for 3 weeks, Mom and Dad flanking them like they were the royal family. And me, in the corner, serving the turkey I'd bought and cooked, the hired help in my own family. I believed love was real, I whispered to my empty kitchen. But it was all just an act. They'd been playing me for nearly 3 decades. Every tear, every sacrifice, every sleepless night just part of their long con to bleed me dry. And tonight, they'd finally asked for the one thing they had no right to take. But what they didn't know was that the meek little Victoria who'd given them everything was dead. She died the moment that wine hit my face. What was left was something else entirely. Something that had been growing in the shadows, fed by years of resentment and betrayal. Something dangerous. And tomorrow, they were going to meet her. The next morning, I sat in my kitchen with coffee that had gone cold hours ago, staring at my phone. 3 missed calls from Mom. 2 from Dad. 7 texts from Danny, each one more demanding than the last. We need to talk. Don't be dramatic. Family meeting tonight. Family meeting. Like I was some employee they could summon. I was about to delete the messages when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Mrs. Chen holding a plate of her famous dumplings. But her face looked troubled. "Victoria, honey," she said when I opened the door. "I don't mean to pry, but I couldn't help overhearing your family last night. They were loud." My stomach clenched. Overhearing what? "They were on your fire escape, talking about you, about your house." Her eyes darted nervously. "I think you should know what they said." The dumplings sat untouched on my counter as Mrs. Chen told me everything. How she'd been watering her plants on her balcony when she heard voices. How my family had gone back to my apartment after I left, using Danny's spare key, the one I'd given him for emergencies 2 years ago. They were planning something, Victoria. Something that didn't sound right. My blood turned to ice. I thanked Mrs. Chen and waited until she left before I called in sick to work. If they were plotting in my own home, I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. By noon, I was parked across from my building, watching. At 1:15, I saw them, all 3 of them, walking up to my front door like they owned the place. Danny's cocky swagger. Dad's determined stride. Mom trailing behind, wringing her hands but still following along. I waited 10 minutes, then used the service entrance to get to the roof. The old building had thin walls and thinner floors. I'd learned that the hard way during my upstairs neighbor's drum practice phase. Now, lying flat on the roof above my own living room, I could hear every word through the heating vents. "The papers are perfect," Dad was saying. "My lawyer buddy Tony drew them up off the books. Looks completely legit. What if she won't sign?" Mom's voice, weak but complicit. Danny laughed, that same laugh from last night, but crueler now. "Please. Victoria's been our ATM for 28 years. She'll sign whatever we put in front of her." My hands started shaking. Through the vent, I could hear them moving around my furniture, probably making themselves comfortable on my couch, drinking from my fridge. "The house is worth $847,000, Dad continued, his voice thick with greed. "In this market, we could flip it for 900 easy. After we split it 3 ways, that's 300 grand each." "What about Victoria?" Mom asked, and for a split second, I thought she might show some maternal instinct. "What about her?" Danny's voice was ice cold. "She's 45, no kids, no husband. She doesn't need this much space. We'll find her a nice studio in Queens. Something affordable." My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I was sure they could hear it from below. The beauty of it, Dad said, is that she'll think she's helping family. Danny needs a house to start his life. Mom and Dad need security. She'll sign because she always does. She's too weak to say no. Too stupid, you mean? Danny added. I've been bleeding her dry since college. She actually thinks I'm grateful. I can't wait to sell this place and buy something in Manhattan. Maybe that penthouse in Soho I saw last week. They were laughing now, all three of them, laughing about how they'd systematically destroyed my life, my dreams, my future, laughing about how easy it had been to manipulate me. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and hit record. For the next 43 minutes, I captured every word, every cruel joke, every calculated plan to steal not just my home, but my entire identity. When they finally left, I stayed on that roof until the sun started setting, listening to the recording over and over, their voices, so casual in their cruelty, so confident in their plan. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. Again, 43 minutes of pure evidence, 43 minutes of them condemning themselves in their own words. They wanted to play games? Fine. Let the games begin. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't call them and unleash 28 years of rage. Instead, I sat in my kitchen with that 43-minute recording, playing it back one more time. Their laughter, their greed, their complete dismissal of my humanity. Each word carved itself into my memory like scripture. Then I did something I'd never done before in my life. I got strategic. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. I walked into the offices of Morrison, Klein & Associates on 42nd Street. Margaret Morrison, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for destroying people who underestimated her. Her consultation fee was $500 an hour, worth every penny. Play the recording, she said after I'd explained the situation. I watched her face as Danny's voice filled her office. She's too stupid to know we're scamming her. Dad's laugh. Victoria's our personal bank account. Mom's weak agreement. She'll sign whatever we put in front of her. Margaret's expression didn't change, but her pen moved faster across her legal pad. When the recording ended, she looked up. Miss Rodriguez, they've just confessed to conspiracy to commit fraud. On tape. Do they know you have this? No? Good. Don't tell them. Don't tell anyone. She leaned forward. How much evidence of your financial contributions can you gather? All of it. I keep every receipt, every bank statement, 28 years worth. Perfect. Bring me everything. We're going to build a fortress around your assets that even family can't breach. I spent Tuesday gathering documents. Bank transfers totaling $247,000 over the years. Receipts for Danny's tuition, Dad's debt payments, Mom's credit card bills. The paper trail of my exploitation cataloged and organized in neat manila folders. Wednesday, I drove to Queens to visit the one person in my family who'd never asked me for a dime. Uncle Pete, Dad's older brother, 83 years old and sharp as a tack. He lived in the same house he'd bought in 1962, mortgage paid off, pride intact. Victoria, he said, opening his door with a smile that faded when he saw my face. What's wrong, sweetheart? I told him everything. Showed him the fake house transfer papers Danny had dropped on my coffee table. Played him pieces of the recording. Watched his face harden with each revelation. Jesus Christ, he whispered. Your own parents. Uncle Pete, I need advice. Not emotional advice, strategic advice. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, even though it was barely noon. Your father always was a greedy bastard. But this. He shook his head. Victoria, you've been playing checkers while they've been playing chess. Time to flip the board. What do you mean? His eyes glinted with something dangerous. Justice isn't loud, sweetheart. It's sharp, silent, surgical. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a business card. My estate attorney. Call him. Tell him Pete Rodriguez sent you. Thursday, I opened a new bank account at a different institution. Transferred every penny from the accounts my family knew about. Changed the locks on my safe deposit box. Updated my will, removing their names entirely. Friday, I sat in my real estate attorney's office, signing papers that would put my house in an irrevocable trust. My family could scheme all they wanted. The house was now legally untouchable. Margaret Morrison called that afternoon. Your parents hired Anthony Clementi. He's a bottom feeder who specializes in elder abuse cases. Except this time, they're trying to prove you're financially abusing them by withholding family assets. I laughed, actually laughed. They're claiming I'm abusing them? It gets better. They're requesting a court-ordered mental competency evaluation for you. Apparently, your sudden hostility toward family indicates possible dementia. The audacity was breathtaking. But it was also their mistake. A big one. Margaret, how long before they find out about the trust? Not until they try to serve you with papers. Which should be. She checked her calendar. Monday. Perfect. I spent the weekend in a strange calm, drinking coffee in my kitchen, watching the East River flow beneath the Brooklyn Bridge. 28 years of being their victim were about to end. Sunday night, as I prepared for bed, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. Same face, but different eyes. Harder, smarter, ready. They thought I was a chess piece in their game. But they didn't know this chessboard was built by me. Every move they'd made, I'd been 3 steps ahead. The war was about to begin, and this time, I held all the weapons. Monday came like Judgment Day. The text arrived at 11 a.m., family dinner tonight. 6 p.m. Don't be late, we have papers to sign. Dad. I stared at the message, then forwarded it to Margaret Morrison. Her reply was immediate. Perfect. See you at 5:45. I dressed carefully. Black suit, the one I'd worn to close my biggest contract last year, power red lipstick, hair pulled back in a bun that meant business. In my briefcase, 28 years of evidence, neatly organized in labeled folders. At 5:45, I met Margaret outside my building. She was younger than I'd expected, mid-40s, blonde hair, predator's smile. Ready to end this? She asked. I've been ready for 28 years. We walked into my dining room at exactly 6 p.m. They were all there, sitting around my mahogany table like they owned it. Danny had his phone out, already recording. Dad shuffled through a stack of official-looking papers. Mom sat silent, wringing her hands. Victoria! Dad's voice boomed with fake warmth. Good, you brought a friend. This won't take long. I set my briefcase on the table. Click. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Before we start, I said, my voice steady as steel, I'd like you to meet Margaret Morrison. She's my attorney. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Danny's phone wavered. Attorney? What do you need an attorney for, Vic? We're family. Margaret smiled like a shark. Mr. Rodriguez, I'm here because your family has committed multiple felonies. Against my client. Against the law. Dad's face went purple. Felonies? What the hell are you talking about? I opened my briefcase and pulled out the first folder. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Attempted theft by deception. Elder abuse. I placed each document on the table with surgical precision. Shall I continue? You're being ridiculous, Mom whispered, but her voice shook. I pulled out my phone and placed it in the center of the table. Danny, remember last Monday when you came to my apartment? When you thought I wasn't here? His face went white. I don't know what you're... I pressed play. Danny's voice filled the room. She's too stupid to know we're scamming her. Dad's laugh. Victoria's our personal bank account. Mom's agreement. She'll sign whatever we put in front of her. The silence that followed was deafening. Danny's phone clattered to the floor. Dad's mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. 43 minutes, I said quietly. 43 minutes of you planning to steal my house. 43 minutes of you laughing about how you've been using me my entire life. Margaret opened her own briefcase. The house is in an irrevocable trust. Your daughter can't sign it over to you even if she wanted to, which she doesn't. But we're family, Dad roared, slamming his fist on the table. She owes us. I stood up slowly, my hands steady for the first time in days. I owe you? My voice cut through his rage like ice. I owe you? I pulled out the financial records. Stack after stack of bank statements, receipts, loan documents. $247,000. That's what I've given you over 28 years. Danny's college tuition. Your gambling debts, Dad? Mom's credit cards? The BMW? The vacations? The clothes? The bail money when Danny got that DUI? Danny's face crumpled. Vic, we can explain? Explain what? I turned to face him, and he actually flinched. Explain how you've been bleeding me dry since you were 18? Explain how you plan to steal my house and leave me homeless? Explain how you've never not once said thank you? Mom started crying. Real tears this time, not her usual manipulation. Victoria, we never meant. Yes, you did. My voice was steady as a judge's gavel. You meant every word, every scheme, every lie. For 28 years, I believed you loved me. Now I know the difference between love and performance. Margaret stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez, you have 48 hours to vacate any property belonging to my client. That includes this apartment, which you've been using as your personal storage facility. You can't kick us out. Dad's voice cracked. We're her parents. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just empty. You stopped being my parents the day you decided I was just a bank account with feelings. Danny tried one last desperate play. The recording's illegal. You can't use it. Margaret's smile was lethal. Actually, New York is a one-party consent state. Your sister had every right to record conversations in her own home. She paused. The recording you made of her humiliation at dinner last week, however, that was done without consent. That's a misdemeanor. The color drained from Danny's face completely. I closed my briefcase. I'm done. 28 years of being your backup plan, your safety net, your personal ATM. I'm done. As Margaret and I walked toward the door, Dad's voice followed us. Smaller now, desperate. Victoria, you can't just abandon your family. I stopped, turned, and smiled the same smile I'd given them the night they threw wine in my face. Watch me. The door closed behind us with a soft click. In the hallway, I could hear them arguing, blaming each other, scrambling for a plan that would never come. I walked away from my family that night. But for the first time in 28 years, I walked toward myself. And that made all the difference. The consequences came swiftly, like dominoes falling in perfect succession. Within a week, the recording had made its way through Brooklyn Heights like wildfire. Mrs. Chen, bless her heart, had accidentally mentioned it to Mrs. Goldstein from 4B, who told her bridge club, who told their daughters, who posted it on the neighborhood Facebook group. By Thursday, the comments were brutal. Imagine trying to steal your own daughter's house. 28 years of supporting them, and this is how they repay her? The audacity is breathtaking. I watched it unfold from my kitchen window, sipping coffee that finally tasted right again. The same neighbors who used to smile politely at my parents now crossed the street when they saw them coming. The bodega owner, Mr. Martinez, who Dad used to joke with every morning, suddenly became very busy with inventory whenever Dad walked in. Danny's downfall was the most spectacular. Someone I never found out who had posted the recording on his social media with the caption, "Local influencer caught planning to defraud his own sister." His follower count plummeted from 15,000 to 300 in 3 days. The brand partnerships dried up overnight. The loft apartment he'd been renting in Williamsburg? Eviction notice served on Friday. I heard through Uncle Pete that Danny had moved back in with my parents, sleeping on the pull-out couch in their studio apartment in Queens. The same studio I'd helped them put a down payment on 5 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom called once, 2 weeks after that final dinner. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was small, defeated. Victoria, honey, please? We made mistakes, but we're still family. Can't we work this out? I deleted the message without finishing it. Dad's construction business took the biggest hit. Word travels fast in the trade. And contractors don't work with men who try to steal from their own children. 3 major contracts were canceled. The crew that had worked for him for 10 years found other jobs. By Christmas, he'd had to shut down entirely. Margaret Morrison called with updates that felt like weather reports. Your father filed for bankruptcy last week. Your mother applied for a job at Target. Your brother is working deliveries for Grubhub. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt, not sadness, just peace. Spring came early that year. I spent my mornings on my fire escape, watching the East River flow beneath the Brooklyn Bridge, coffee warm in my hands. The same view I'd had for 15 years, but somehow it looked different now. Cleaner, brighter. My house felt bigger too, now that it was truly mine. I'd redecorated the dining room, replaced the mahogany table where they'd thrown wine in my face with something lighter, airier, Danish modern, all clean lines and honest wood. Uncle Pete visited every Sunday. We'd sit in my living room talking about everything except them. He'd bring his homemade marinara sauce and stories from the old neighborhood. Real family, I realized, not the performance I'd mistaken for love all those years. One evening in May, as I was watering the plants on my fire escape, I heard familiar voices from the street below. I looked down and saw them, all three of them, standing on the sidewalk across from my building. Dad's shoulders stooped with defeat, Mom clutching a worn purse, Danny looking smaller somehow, deflated. They were staring up at my windows, at the warm light spilling out, at the life they'd tried to steal but could never touch. I could have waved, could have called down to them, could have opened the door one more time. Instead, I turned away and went inside. I made myself dinner just for me, exactly what I wanted, and ate it at my new table while jazz played softly in the background. Through the window, the city sparkled like scattered diamonds. For 28 years, I'd believed that love meant sacrifice, that family meant giving until you had nothing left, that being a good daughter meant never saying no. Now I understood the difference between love and transaction, between family and exploitation, between generosity and enabling. I'd spent 3 decades trying to earn their love by bankrupting myself. But love, real love, doesn't come with invoices. It doesn't keep score. It doesn't demand everything and give nothing back. That night, I fell asleep in my own bed, in my own house, surrounded by the silence of a life that finally belonged to me. Justice, I learned, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's as quiet as a door closing, as final as a phone going unanswered, as simple as choosing yourself after a lifetime of choosing everyone else. And sometimes, that's the most powerful revenge of all. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen on a quiet Sunday morning, watching the first snow of winter dust the Brooklyn Bridge. The same window, the same view, but everything had changed. The silence in my home wasn't empty anymore. It was full of peace, full of possibility, full of the life I'd finally claimed as my own. I'd kept one family photo on my mantle, not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder. Christmas 1995, all of us smiling. The last time I believed that family meant unconditional love instead of conditional transactions. Now I looked at that little girl in the picture, so eager to please, so desperate to belong, and I felt protective of her. She deserved better than what she got. We all do. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. Uncle Pete stood on my doorstep with a bottle of wine and his usual Sunday smile. Ready for dinner, kiddo? This was family now. Someone who showed up without expecting anything in return. Someone who brought wine instead of demands. Someone who celebrated my victories instead of resenting them. As we cooked together in my kitchen, Uncle Pete told me about his week, asked about my work, shared stories that didn't end with requests for money. Real conversation, real connection, real love. You know, he said, stirring the sauce, your grandmother would be proud of you. For walking away from her son? For walking toward yourself. He paused, meeting my eyes. Takes courage to choose truth over comfort, Victoria. Not everyone has it. That evening, after Uncle Pete left, I poured myself a glass of the wine we'd shared, a good Bordeaux. The kind I used to think was too expensive for someone like me. I sat in my living room, surrounded by furniture I'd chosen, art I loved, books I wanted to read. For the first time in my adult life, nothing in my home belonged to someone else's dream. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Victoria, it's Danny. I know you won't answer calls. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to know that I finally understand what we took from you. I hope someday you can forgive us. I read it twice, then deleted it. Some bridges burn completely, and that's not always a tragedy. Sometimes it's liberation. I'd learned hard truths in the past year. Truths that would have broken the old Victoria, but had made the new one unbreakable. Blood doesn't make family, behavior does. Love isn't what people say. It's what they do when no one is watching. And never underestimate someone who has given you everything, because they know exactly what everything costs. The snow fell heavier now, blanketing the city in white. Clean, fresh, new. I thought about all the people watching this story. All the sons and daughters who recognized themselves in my pain. All the parents who saw their own children's sacrifices clearly for the first time. All the families who might choose differently because of what happened to mine. Sometimes justice isn't just personal. Sometimes it's a gift you give to everyone who comes after you. I raised my glass to my reflection in the window, to the woman who'd chosen truth over comfort, boundaries over manipulation, self-respect over family obligation. The wine tasted like victory, sweet, earned, and entirely mine. There are losses that can never be recovered. But the truth always brings freedom. And freedom, I'd discovered, tastes better than any family dinner ever could. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the old world in possibility. Inside, I sat in the warmth of a life I'd built with my own hands, surrounded by the quiet satisfaction of justice served. I'd spent 45 years believing that good daughters owe their lives to family loyalty. Now I knew better. Good daughters owe themselves the courage to say no, the wisdom to recognize manipulation, the strength to walk away from people who mistake their love for weakness. Most of all, they owe themselves peace. And peace, I'd learned, is the sweetest revenge of all. I closed the curtains, turned off the lights, and went to bed in my own house, in my own life, surrounded by the profound silence of a choice well made. Family isn't about sharing blood, it's about sharing truth, and the truth had finally set me free.